guys, I'm Jeff. This is Ottawa Bike and Trail, and this is part 3 of our cheap bike build-off. I've got the complete bike right behind me. Today, we're going to go through the full bike, give you a complete bike check. I'm going to walk you through what we did, why we did it, and also explain what we spent in putting this bike together. Thank you for joining us. I want to hear your comments. What do you think of this bike? Leave a comment below. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so here's our complete bike, and I'm just gonna give you a little rundown on everything, but before we do, let me explain what the cheap bike build-off is if you have not been following along. This is a contest put together by the Mullet Mechanic, and the idea is to build the coolest bike you can for $150. So that's what we did. That $150 does not include labor, fortunately, because we put a lot of time and effort into this bike. But we did stay under the $150, and I'll talk you through kind of what we did, why we did it, what the costs were for each of the parts and all of that. So let's get into it. All right, so let's start with the bike itself. So we had this old vintage Kalkhoff cruiser style bike up in our storage area. A customer had donated it to us quite a while ago. In fact, we get a lot of bikes donated to us, or we'll give people $25 credit if they drop off a junk bike as part of a new bike purchase. So we do end up with a lot of extra bikes that we take parts off of, and that's mostly what we used to build this bike up. But we started with this Kalkhoff frame. We were able to reuse the fork and the headset, of course, and then we ultimately ended up using the bottom bracket and the crankset from the original bike. And originally we had planned to do something different. If you watch the previous episodes, we had replaced the bottom bracket and used a different crankset, but the total cost for those two changes put us over the budget. The bottom bracket we had to use to make it work with this bike was $30, and then the crankset and new chainring we estimated at $15, so $45. That just did not fit within the budget, so we were able to go back to the original crankset and bottom bracket, and frankly, I think it looks great. It wasn't what we'd originally planned, but I think all things considered, it does look really cool on this bike. Really nice chrome on the crankset, and the crank arms shined up really nice. So all in all, not dissatisfied with that at all. So those are the original parts that we used from the original bike. And we estimate that the bike was worth about $25. There's not a lot of Kalkhoffs to compare against out there, but we do see a lot of Schwinn collegiates, old Schwinn bikes, and if you can find them all day long on Facebook for 20 to 30 bucks in the condition that this bike started off in. So we went with $25 for the cost of the bike and the original parts that we used. All right, so let's talk about what I think is one of the highlights of this bike, and that is the rear hub. So originally this bike had a coaster brake hub on it that was in really bad shape. So we found a 3-speed Sturmey Archer hub with a drum brake. And this has been sitting up in our storage area, came off of an old tandem, and we decided to build the bike around this 3-speed hub, and I think it turned out really nice. We refurbished it, greased all the bearings, got it working, got it shifting, and built a wheel around it. We actually recycled an old mountain bike wheel. We were able to use the rim and the spokes. Hey, Deeks. Got a little visitor here. How you doing, buddy? So we built a wheel around the hub, and we were able to recycle an old mountain bike wheel that we had in our stash. We were also able to use some spokes from that wheel. We did have to trim them a little bit to get them to work, but we were able to build a wheel around that. So we estimated the value of the rear hub at $10, and I think that's fair value. I ran that by some friends that work at a co-op, and they thought that was about right. The rear hub is probably worth more than that, but in the condition that we found it, it needed to be serviced and rebuilt, and was questionable whether it even worked. So I think $10 is a fair price. And then for the recycled wheel that we used to build the wheel, $10 for that as well. So 20 bucks for the hub and the wheel is what we estimated. On the front, we found an old Schwinn that we had up in our storage area, and we liked the hub on it, so we pulled the hub off, cleaned it up, built this also around a old mountain bike wheel that we harvested. And so for the front wheel, we estimated $5 for the hub, $5 for the donor rim. Again, that was just in our stash of wheels. And then the spokes, we did have to pull some spokes out of a bunch of spokes that leftover spokes that we had sitting around. So we estimated $10 for the spokes. So the front wheel, all in all, $20. All right, so the tires that we used, Schwalbe Marathons, these came off of my old Bridgestone X04, which I've had for about 8 years. So the tires are about 8 years old. And we just used what our co-op would charge for these, which is $5 per tire. So $10 total for the front and rear tires. The handlebars, if you remember in our previous episode, we had a Bull Moose mountain bike handlebar on this bike, and we decided to switch that out this is a Soma Noah's Ark handlebar that we had, and I just think it looks better on this bike. Originally we wanted to use mountain bike tires and do sort of a 90s mountain bike look, but we also wanted to use the fenders, so we kind of compromised and came up with more of a cafe racer style, and I thought these handlebars looked really cool with that style of bike. So the handlebars, we guessed $10 on that, and the stem just came off of a old bike that we had, and it's really cheap. I'd say $250 for that. All right, so the grips we used on this bike just came out of our stash, and I guessed $5. They're in good condition, but they're used. The saddle, same thing. It was a very used saddle. It's got some issues, but I thought it looked pretty good on this. $5 we estimated for the saddle. All right, this single speed chain was just a spare that was sitting in our parts bin, opened, and I don't know, I don't think it's been used, but we estimated it's worth about $10. All right, so we had these cool pedals in our stash. These are WTB pedals, and I just put a value of $10 on them. So a lot of you had asked about cable routing on this. We had some old cable routing bits that we used. This bike did not come with any cables on it because it was a single speed coaster brake, but we were able to use some old cable routing bits to mount everything up. So we included some costs for just cables and the other bits. So you can see we just used some zip ties also. Didn't count those in the cost. And we were able to reuse the old shifter that was part of the hub. It came on the tandem bike along with the hub, so that was included in the cost for that. All right, so once we included all of the other small parts that we used in this build, the grand total came to $147.99. So we really had to work to keep it under the $150, but we did it. I'll have a complete cost breakdown in the description for this video, so check it out. All right, guys, last thing I want to do is talk a little bit about what we learned from this project. First of all, we had a blast. I have to thank, though, John and Dave. They did a lot of the work on this for me. I did some of the work. I did the hub rebuild. I kind of came up with the general idea, but they helped me with a lot of the aspects of this build. So thank you guys for doing that. It was a real team effort. I think what we learned is that the labor and effort that we put into this bike was a lot more than we had originally planned on. Not only, rebuilding the hub, making all the parts work together, but we spent a lot of time searching for cheap parts that would work on this bike. So I would say if you go into a project like this, if you have a lot of time to spend, then you can be successful. But if you have to pay somebody to do it, or obviously there was cost to me to have guys working on this instead of something else, the labor that goes into something like this is the most expensive factor. So you can find cheap bikes out there, you can find cheap parts. If you can do the work yourself, you can make it worthwhile. The expense for the labor is definitely the most significant factor. But we love the way the bike turned out. It was a lot of fun, and we look forward to doing this again next year. We don't expect to win. This was really just a fun project for us. It did keep us busy during some of the coldest days of this winter, so we're thankful for that. So thank you to the Mullet Mechanic and to all the guys that put this project together. We're proud to be part of it, and we look forward to seeing everyone else's bikes and seeing how it all ends up. So thanks again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.